Welcome to PandaHead Studios. Now that you're here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below to join the Panda Force. And today we are going to be talking about Full Dive. The ultimate next gen full dive RPG is even shittier than real life episode 1, which is overall a lot of fun. This was a really good first episode.
I agree. I enjoyed it top to bottom. Very little complaints unless I'm really being nitpicky. The show's about this character named Hiroshi Yuki. He's essentially just like a reclusive shut-in who has very little aspirations, and all he does is play like full dive VR games that are at mass MMOs. And he's looking to acquire the latest of a series of video games called Fantasy Quest
Final Quest.
or Final Quest. He's looking to acquire the most recent release of the game Final Quest, and he ends up getting through various circumstances that are very well done. He ends up meeting this girl, Riona Kisaragi, and she's a clerk at a backwater video game store, and she, being that they're not carrying that game because he was unable to purchase it, she convinces him to, instead of playing the tired old games that's the 22nd iteration, he should try this game, which is 10 years old.
Yeah.
And she honeypots him in order for him to do it because she's very attractive in a stereotypical anime way. And he then tries it, and then he meets these two NPCs that are supposed to be like his childhood friends and his best friends. He ends up accidentally killing the brother due to them having like a fight because he's trying to pursue what the intro told him to do rather than listening to the NPC. And
He thinks it's a video game. Do what you want.
yeah. And then he runs away from the sister who is mad at him for running away after killing the brother. And then he runs after losing her in a really awesome sequence. He loses her, and he ends up in an alleyway where Riona reappears as a fairy that I would say is much akin to Navi from Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, it definitely seems they're going to go that route with her character.
And that's where the episode ends. And I was just like, this is definitely one of the best of the most recent of the animes that are coming out in this point.
You definitely a better first episode than most of them, I will say.
Yeah, most anime, it's a better first, and it doesn't have any world building. And normally, I want.
Yeah, it really doesn't. You get more about the characters. Like Hiroshi specifically. I want to say it's about the first half of the episode is him in the real world. Like it has him doing like this meeting with a teacher. It's
a very entertaining.
it is very funny, and only because like the teacher seems very incompetent because he's just paraphrasing like the title of this book that is clearly on his desk where Hiroshi can see it and read the title, and like Hiroshi's even like having mental thoughts about you're just paraphrasing, like you're poorly paraphrasing this.
And he spots the book on the bookshelf, and
no, it's not on the bookshelf. It's literally on the teacher's desk.
Oh yeah. And I
with like I think it has like notes like near it or something.
It's a great example of show don't tell. That's why the scene is so good, because it's showing you his character and defining all of his traits in an organic way. Where someone who's about close to graduating high school is like they're trying to push all the aspirate. Like, what do you want to be? You got
do you want to do a job, or do you want to go to college or something like that? And he ends up leaving the office and runs into a friend of his who it seems like at one point they were friends but no longer speak very much anymore, who's on like a track and field team, and they're sort of talking, and Hiroshi makes a joke about the fact that the meeting was useless, and they're talking about the fact that they should go to the gym sometime. They haven't done it in a while. There's this track meet coming up that his friend is going to be participating in, and his friend makes a comment, like starts to talk about it and says, it's been 2 years since. Oh, sorry. I really enjoyed that scene because you sort of get this sense of why Hiroshi is this sort of reclusive gamer so much now. Because to me, it came across that like he was part of the track and field team and got hurt, and his sort of coping mechanism from his injury was to dive into video games, and like he wasn't able, for whatever reason, wasn't able to come back to the track team, so he just sort of shut down.
Well, and that's like the second time they mention it because the teacher mentions that too. Just to emphasize that more, I assume, for storytelling reasons.
Yeah.
But I just, to me, I actually interpreted that scene a little bit differently to where it was more that he did something more buffoonish or he in some way embarrassed himself. I didn't get the fact, I didn't interpret that he got hurt. I figured more of like he was supposed to do the hurdles and just tripped over the very first one. And
Yeah,
it could be both.
It could be both.
You could hurt yourself doing
like
that.
And I actually enjoy the fact that they don't really delve into it because it's not like, it's just meant to be at least to me, it was meant to be hey, we're setting up why this person is a recluse. The specifics of it, I enjoy the fact that they can be left up to interpretation. I enjoy the fact that like it's unclear whether he got hurt or he made a buffoon of himself. But what matters is he's this reclusive, shut down, sort of loser character. And that's what matters. And we see that even more because in the next scene, he's walking to go pick up, Final Quest 22 because he pre-ordered it online. And he runs into these two bullies and ends up giving them what he thought was like 1,000 yen, but ends up giving them 10,000 yen. And they're talking about, oh, you're such a great friend. You're a good buddy. If there's anyone at school you don't like, just let us know and we'll beat them up. And I love it because his immediate thought is, they're right in front of me.
Yeah, the only people I want, his quote is great, the only people I want beaten up are right in front of me.
Yeah. And it's so fun. And
it's a perfect example of bullies.
Yeah. And he goes to the store and can't buy it, and of course, and that's where he ends up in this like hole in the wall backwater gaming store. And he sees, and it's filled top to bottom with video games, and we see this sign that says, I think it's like Final Quest new release or something like that. And he immediately is like, oh yes, they have it, and goes to grab it, and is like, this is last year's. And he gets Riona's attention, and it is sort of like continuing to ask her about Final Quest 22 and if her store carries it. And I love it because she goes on this tirade about the fact that it's an overplayed tropey game. It's, the people that play it are really just playing it because it's what they've been doing so long. That, nothing's been as good as the first time you played it, and now they're on 22. And it's, humanity's only in the 21st century. How can they have 22 games? Like, she goes on this funny tirade about the fact that it's Final Quest 22.
I love that part because it shows they're as much as they're having a natural conversation that people would have. It feels like real words being spoken by real people to real people.
Yeah,
it's also kind of speaking to us as viewers because this show is clearly going to be akin to shows like Log Horizon, Sword Art Online, Overlord, to where it's taking place. It's essentially an isekai, which is clearly what they're kind of commenting on. Too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And they're saying that they're treading water that they're all doing, but this is all boring, so we're going in a new direction, which I really hope they do go in a new direction. And thankfully, they don't have a sister that's attracted.
They do have a sister we know nothing about, though.
As long as she isn't into him, like the last, like
yeah,
a few other,
I
really
hope. Yes,
I don't need that. At least have a stepsister. They'll make good H series.
You're right. That would make a good H series. But so she ends up like honeypotting him and tricking him into buying this like 10-year-old game, and says, "Oh, I'll help. I play it all the time. I'll log in later and I'll show you the ropes. I'll be your mentor. This game is for adults." And she says it very like seductively and sensually, and it's got this like the rating system is for them it's double Z, but it's essentially meant to be like, it's sort of making a joke of the ESRB ratings, and essentially the A rating where it's adult only because they say it's suggested for 20 and up, but that's not necessary. It's just a guideline. when those guidelines kind of exist, in part for a reason. There are some that I'm like, why is this? But I digress.
Marketing tools.
Yes, I digress though.
Self-regulation.
And he ends up going home and, realizes the game is 10 years old. And it occurs to him that, he got this hot girl's number and this 10-year-old game. And I just got honeypotted into playing this game.
I'm going to go return it.
And he either is going to return it or break it. And then he's like, and he tries calling her and he can't reach her. And he, eventually ends up going home. We briefly see the sister for like 2 seconds, and then it's him diving into the game, which is really interesting because it has that stereotypical like video game intro with this like goddess figure character telling him to leave the starting town and go to this castle, and he enters the game, and that's it. There's no other intro bit for this game, and he's sort of messing around with it a little bit, and
he wakes up in a bedroom, very traditional for classic RPGs.
Yeah, specifically fantasy RPGs. And he ends up meeting. He first starts talking to this character Alicia, who's the little sister of the NPC best friend,
and she introduces herself as like, "Hi, I'm your childhood friend."
Yeah, I was like. But it's very NPC sort of intro video gamey mechanics. If you play a lot of video games where you have this intro this intro NPC that's supposed to be friends with the main character, they very often say, "I'm your childhood friend."
They follow the tropes.
They follow the tropes, and you think they set it up very well that it's going to be a very tropey show, until he says, "I want to leave and go to this castle," and the best friend and little sister freak out and go, "No, you can't do that. It's not allowed. Like, no one is allowed to leave the village. Only special, like, very specific envoys are allowed even in, and only, like, guards are allowed out." And he keeps going, but it's like, why can't I just leave? Like, why can't I just go? And they're like, "Did you hit your head or something? There's goblins, hordes of goblins." And he's like, "Oh, I'll just beat them. That's fine." Because, I mean, he's a gamer. That's the mentality, is goblins are weak. And the best friend goes, "You clearly don't get it." And
if he would have said you need to watch Goblin Slayer, it probably would have made him rethink his actions.
That's very true. And the best friend ends up, beating him up. Which is when he realizes that this isn't just like a VR MMO. It's a true full dive, because like he had tasted like an apple before and smelled something. He's like, "Oh, I got
his knee and was like, pain. I don't want this in a video game."
Yeah, and then he gets punched and he's like, "Oh God, this hurts." Which I'm not gonna lie, I might play VR. Like, if that was an actual option for a VR MMO where you got all 5 senses, I'd probably play it personally.
I'd let when a new console's released, I'm going to let the first 10,000 be tested out by someone else. Red Ring of Death teaches you a lot of lessons.
Yes, it does.
I didn't make that mistake. Fools! All of you Xbox people.
I did. Anyways, so he ends up getting beat up, and the best friend character makes commentary about the fact that you can't even fight me. How can you possibly how can you possibly beat up a goblin? And is mocking him and making fun of him. And it makes Hiroshi realize that and sort of think about all these people that sort of are mean to him or pick on him or
first he's like thinking it's just the intro, and that's how he escapes, gets out of town, so he's got to do the intro and fight the brother. And then the brother beats him up, and then he thinks about all the people bullying him because he's sitting there trash talking him. And then he like cuts an apple with a knife and puts it in his mouth, and then he goes to tackle him. And his knife ends up in his throat, and it's really graphic.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I was like, wow, that's awesome. And then the sister has a rational reaction of being horrified because it's her best friend killing her brother. Or a close friend, at least, killing her brother.
It's so good. And I love the fact that they set up tropey NPCs to real reactions. I love that because in my opinion, it was a very good like sort of subversion of going into a video game plot.
Well, that's what was so great about Riona's description of the game. Is it fits exactly where at first it seems like it's going to be all those tropes that you're complaining about, And then as soon as all the what pre-rendered dialogue is where without the programmed responses,
Yeah.
which clearly this is programmed, but it's less, it's a lot better, and it feels very real. And at that point where that shifts, and even in his personality, where he realizes he's not in like a normal game and kills the brother, like it's so good, like how everything is set up, and there's these payoffs.
Yeah, and it's great because they have this argument back and forth where he's just like stumbling over what to say, and she keeps going, "What are you going to do about this?" and things like that. And he eventually is just like, "Sorry," and takes off, and
turns into a person.
She literally just like, well, I love the immediate response because she's like, "Did you just run away?" And then bolts after him, and there's this really funny scene of him being chased.
It looks like a cartoon chase. You can't see his feet. Lots of dust.
Yeah. And he ends up like losing her running through town and ends up in an alleyway. And that's when Riona's avatar shows up as a little fairy.
Tinkerbell was sexy.
Which I actually have a problem with because the way this was like, the way they've portrayed everything up till now is everyone's wearing, like even Riona in real life is wearing very normal clothing. And she is. She's wearing a t-shirt. Like it's probably a little.
It's a vast like a tank top that doesn't show cleavage.
Yeah, but it's a relatively normal outfit. It's not like it's probably yes, it's tighter than it should be. It's probably tighter than it needs to be, but it's relatively normal speaking. And the characters we see in the video game world are wearing pretty standard fantasy clothing. And here she comes as like this fairy that's hypersexualized.
Well, she says it's a special skin that's exclusive to dealers of these games, and he says it's normally for players, and then there's no mention of it.
Yeah, she blows it off.
And I love how then she looks at because she realizes that he didn't do. She asks him about the apple orchard, which is where the NPCs are trying to lead Hiroshi to.
And he's not really responding. He's sort of stumbling over what to say because he doesn't know how to say, I killed the... And it turns out that, like, in this game, you don't get... It's not like a traditional MMO or video game where you get to see your status plate and see all your stats and your equipment and, like, titles you earn throughout the game. You actually have this little, like, necklace that, as you do things in-game, generate titles for you. And she takes a look at it, and his first title is Best Friend Killer. Because she thought he did something lewd with the little sister. She's like, oh, you did something lewd. And she's horrified.
That was something I really liked. They implied that she was going to be, the little sister was going to be some sort of love interest for him. Like she's the childhood friend.
Yeah.
The Mary Jane or the Donna from that 70s show, just to do some equivalent. And see, and that's... I just and then that ending, and it just was like it's a complete episode.
Yeah,
and it's a whole story. It could be its own little OVA. That one little episode could just be its own little OVA.
Yeah,
because it's complete. It has setups and payoffs. I mean, there's still more setups for future episodes, and they have what's nice very little world building, but the world building they have defines everything very well.
Yes.
You understand the world he's in and like what he's having to deal with just from the little bit of interactions he has with the NPCs.
Yeah, and I really enjoy this as an episode because a lot of what you're learning is in a very organic manner. The learning that the five senses work. Like he figures that out because he smells something nice. He tastes an apple. He hits his knee on a table. Like all of these things are happening in an organic way. It's not a pop-up menu that tells you this or
16 strength and 12 charisma.
And I kind of like the fact that you don't get statuses. Like I'm
interested for now.
Yes, at least for now. But I hope they do keep that. I hope that the status plate stays away for this video game and it goes along with that what it's trying to portray, which is a realistic video game, which is going to be very interesting. I hope it's good, and I hope it's fun.
Yeah, I loved all. Like my favorite joke in the whole thing was when he opens up a menu, thinking he's like in like a
you've been trapped in it, yeah,
he's trapped in some MMO game, and the menu opens up for him to exit. And he's like, "Oh, good, I can leave."
Yeah.
They even comment on how he pulls up the menu, and they're like, "What are you doing?" Because they don't see the menu; they just see him.
They see him like poking the air, yeah. But overall, yeah, this is really good, and I will say the animation I thought was really smooth throughout this. I mean, there's a couple moments where I'm like, eh.
Well, and the little fight they had when he was playing another game, the Fantasy Quest game. They showed him having a fight with something as like a heroic knight paladin-esque character. And so you got a sense of like the kind of combat action that maybe seemed, and like at least to see the kinetic action, and then there's also like the chase between him and the sister, and then there's also just a conversation with him and the teacher, and how natural that is, and how good everything looks. Because a lot of times they'll have characters look at one shot, and then they'll be talking this way, so you can't really get like the angles they use are like it's very good, and it feels alive, like in the dialogue and in the art, animation style, everything.
Yeah.
The quality, style, and quality.
Yep.
Thanks for watching. That's all we got.
Have a good one. Thank you for watching. We'd love to know your thoughts down below in the comments. And while you're there, don't forget to hit that like button. And now that you're part of the Panda Force, don't forget to hit that bell icon for future orders.
If you're interested in joining us gaming, check us out on Twitch. And for updates, follow us on Twitter. Links are in the description down below.